Daniel Kahneman's book Thinking Fast and Slow caught my attention recently. What was the price of a ball if I gave you a ball and a bat worth $1.10 and told you the bat cost $1 more? It's likely that your fast thinking system, which Daniel Kahneman calls your fast thinking system 1, fooled you into thinking 10 cents right away. In your slow reasoning system, you realize that if the ball costs 10 cents, then the bat must cost $1.10, making the total cost $1.20. Intuition and automatic thinking system number 1 and reasoning system 2 are like a group of newspaper reporters and editors. A reporter's system is constantly writing stories and delivering them to an editor's system. Since she doesn't have time or energy to verify every story's source, she blindly trusts reporters and publishes stories she hasn't checked. Then, after publishing those stories, she defends them even if they are false, which gets her and the paper in trouble. We might end up in the wrong career, in a dysfunctional relationship, or in a dysfunctional business if we fail to slow down and use our editor to verify System 1 reporting. We can be fooled in a variety of ways by our intuitive thinking system. It is easy to become overwhelmed by cognitive biases after reading Thinking Fast and Slow, but I have identified 3 cognitive biases that are contributing to most of our fast thinking errors. Faulty fast thinking bias number 1, the frequent exposure bias. The author Daniel Kahneman asserts that repetition is one of the most reliable ways to make people believe falsehoods. Because familiarity cannot be separated from truth, authoritarian institutions and marketers have always recognized this. When students at the University of Michigan were exposed to Turkish-sounding words like quadriga and cerisa, they decided they would trust the candidate whose name they had heard or seen the most before an election if they did not do research. Those students were more likely to rate random words on a questionnaire later on as meaning something good when they were placed in ad boxes on the school newspaper for several weeks. Before making an important decision, if we fail to check for frequent exposure bias or what psychologists call the mere exposure effect, our preferences will be shaped by our surroundings. We must pause before making major decisions and ask ourselves, is this the best option or is it simply the option I have been exposed to frequently in order to combat frequent exposure bias and exercise our free will? When hiring a new employee, I may prefer candidate A over candidate B simply because I spent more time with him. My System 1 judgment needs to be challenged and I need to schedule more face-to-face time with the other candidate. My wife and I spent equal amounts of time visiting each of our top 3 choices of homes and neighborhoods when we were searching for a new home. Consider asking yourself, is this the best option or just what I've been exposed to often if you want to avoid the frequent exposure bias? Faulty fast thinking bias number 2, the status quo bias. Why do we stay in careers we don't like? Why do CEOs invest in failing projects more than they should? And why do most investors hold losing stocks for 11 months and only sell them in December so that they can get a tax break? According to Daniel Kahneman, losses loom larger than gains because of loss aversion and the endowment effect. It has been shown by his research that the average person weighs a loss twice as much as a gain psychologically. Loss aversion is the reason many people instinctively turn down a $100 bet when the coin flipped. One intuition, they would realize that if they took that bet 10,000 times, they would almost be guaranteed to make money if they slowed down a new system, 2 to challenge their system, and 1 to challenge their system. In order to illustrate the endowment effect, Kahneman gave a new coffee mug to a group of random students. He then asked them how much they would be willing to sell it for. He then gathered another group of students and asked them whether they wanted the coffee mug or a sum of money equal to the mug's value. Those who sold the mug valued it at $7.12, while the choosers, who did not own it and were not emotionally attached to it, valued it at $7.12. Same mug at $3.12, slightly different perspective, drastically different value. If we are stuck in the past and destined to maintain the status quo, we will overweigh losses, loss aversion, and overvalue what we own and invest in the endowment effect. The status quo bias can be countered if we notice when our preference is to maintain the status quo and ask ourselves, what opportunities would I be losing by doing so? You give options outside of the status quo equal psychological weight by matching the fear of losing what you own and what you invest in with the fear of losing a better opportunity. That way, you use loss aversion against itself. Investing in this failing stock means I cannot invest my money in other valuable investments. If I continue to devote my time to this failing project, I cannot put my time into other opportunities. Faulty, fast thinking bias number 3, tunnel vision. In response to the following riddle from Thinking Fast and Slow, what is your automatic response? Steve is a shy and withdrawn American who's always helpful, but has little interest in people. Steve is a meek and tidy soul who needs order and structure in his life. Is Steve more likely to be a librarian or a farmer? The limited information I've provided makes librarians seem like the obvious choice, but you've just been fooled again by System 1. You might realize that Steve is unlikely to be a librarian if you slow down and use System 2. You would find that there are significantly more farmers in America than librarians if you verified your intuitive, fast conclusion. The number of men in the agricultural industry is roughly 20 times greater than the number of men in the library industry. System 1 is characterized by jumping to conclusions about Steve. I call this tunnel vision bias. Author Daniel Kahneman calls it Wysiati. System 1 likes to use limited information to form quick judgments. Basically, Kahneman describes System 1 as a person who sees 2 or 3 pieces of information and then infers and invents causes and intentions, neglects ambiguity, and suppresses doubts. Due to this, you can assume you know someone based on what they do or what they look like when you meet them, only to find out later that your judgment was completely incorrect. By asking ourselves, why might the opposite be true, we can counteract our natural tendency to form beliefs based on limited information. When I'm given a project that's similar to a project I've done before and believe it'll be easy, I wonder why the opposite might be the case. I use this question to test old assumptions, be prepared for new challenges ahead, and avoid underestimating projects and misleading people no matter what. We can identify helpful information we've been subconsciously ignoring by asking why the opposite may be true. Asking why might the opposite be true broadens our lens. As a result, the next time you make a major decision, slow down and scan your faulty thinking checklist. Ask yourself, is this the best option, or is it simply the option I've been exposed to over and over again? Do I have a bias against loss and follow the status quo bias, or am I suffering from tunnel vision and need to investigate other options? In Daniel Kahneman's view, maintaining one's vigilance against biases is a challenging task. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman conveys the core message that avoiding costly mistakes is sometimes worth the effort. I highly recommend this book, which will help you make better decisions and think clearly. Click on the link below to receive a one-page PDF summary of the insights I gleaned from it. This PDF is in your inbox if you are already a subscriber to the free Productivity Game email newsletter. Enjoy this video and don't forget to share it. Thank you for watching and have a great week.